Moonbound, Legacy of the Flame, Part 3. Chapter 18, The Night of Two Moons. They had only ever seen one moon in the sky. But the Hollow had always whispered of a second. A moon that wasn't light. A moon that was memory. Once every 300 years, both moons rose together. One silver. One black. A mirror in the sky. And on that night, the Hollow became what it had once been. A place where the dead could speak. Sithra found the passage buried in the oldest records, sealed inside a hidden spine of a rotting tome titled The Flame's First Silence. When the twin moons awaken, the Hollow will remember all it tried to bury. The living will see the forgotten. The dead will walk among trees. The fire will flicker. And judgment will fall. Aelin read it 3 times. Each word sounded older than language itself. "Is it true?" she asked. Sithra only nodded. "It's already begun." Ronan saw her just after sunset. A woman, standing at the edge of the Hollow's southern wall. No breath. No footsteps. But her face. He knew it. His mother. Dead 15 years. "You should not have given her your name," she said. "You forgot who we were. You forgot who she was." Then she vanished into mist. He didn't follow. He couldn't move. Aelin dreamed she stood in the temple. But it was not the temple she knew. It was older, built from bone and bark, flickering with blue fire. The walls were lined with flames in jars. Each jar had a name. And hers? Empty. Sarastra appeared beside her, not as enemy, not as queen, but as something in between. "You never truly lit it," Sarastra said softly. "You carried the spark, but not the story." Aelin turned to her. "Then give it back." "It was never yours," Sarastra whispered. "It was mine, until they carved it from me and buried it in your blood." The flames around them pulsed. "Your fire is made of my silence." Aelin stepped back. The jars rattled. And one by one, they cracked. Outside, the trees began to bleed. Not sap. Memory. Ribbons of red light spilled from cracks in the trunks, each strand holding a voice, a whisper, a name long lost. The Hollow warriors stood frozen as the air thickened with presence. Not enemies. Echoes. Some wept. Some screamed. Some simply watched. One reached for Aelin. "You are what was promised," it said. "You are what we gave her before we died. You are the ember of the undoing." At midnight, the second moon rose. Not white. Not gold. Not silver. Black. A shadow carved in perfect shape, hovering beside the full moon like a wound in the sky. When it appeared, every flame in the Hollow flickered once, and dimmed. The fire in the temple shrank. The torches on the walls hissed and died. Even Aelin's chest, her source, her soul, grew cold. The fire was not gone. But it was listening. All across the Hollow, the earth swelled. Not physically. Energetically. A pulse moved through the soil, slow, deep, ancient. The wolves howled, not in fear, but in reverence. And from the far ridge of the forest, shapes moved into view. Not soldiers. Not spirits. But judges. The old Hollow. The flamebearers who had come before. The ones who betrayed Sarastra, and the ones who tried to stop it. At the sacred tree, Aelin stood alone. The judges encircled her. They did not speak aloud. They did not draw weapons. They remembered. And she felt every memory in her body. The moment her mother sealed Sarastra's name. The first time she lit the flame and felt it hesitate. The night she let Ronan choose, and feared what he would become. Then Sarastra appeared at the edge of the ring. "I do not need to destroy you," she said. I only need them to remember what you took. Aelin's voice was hoarse but steady. Then let them remember it all. And she raised her hand. And lit the tree. The roots caught fire. Silver fire. Not hers. Theirs. It did not consume. It revealed. And what it revealed made every judge stop. Because buried inside the tree's center, encased in flame and stone, was Sarastor's original flame. Still flickering. Still alive. And at its base, carved in ancient runes. This flame shall burn for both queen and thief, if they choose to become one. The moons held still in the sky. The hollow stopped breathing. And both queens, fireborn and forgotten, stood at the heart of everything. Will you share it? Sarastra asked. Or will we burn each other to ash? Aelin stepped forward. And reached for the flame. Chapter 19, The Shattered Vow. The moment Aelin's fingers touched the flame, the world held its breath. 2 queens. 2 legacies. 2 sparks born of the same betrayal. The fire flared silver and gold in equal measure, spiraling between them like a living ribbon. And for a heartbeat, just one, it worked. The hollow pulsed with something it hadn't felt in centuries. Balance. But balance cannot last when it is built on broken promises. Aelin felt at first, a pull, like a current beneath the fire, twisting. Not rejecting her. But splitting. The flame that joined them shivered. Cracks formed in the space between their hands, delicate and glowing like lightning. Then Sarastra gasped. She staggered back, her eyes wide. No. This isn't just flame. It's a seal. Aelin's mark flared. A buried scream echoed in her chest. Cithra cried out from the edge of the grove. Stop the ritual. But it was too late. The flame exploded upward in a column of light. But what emerged was not heat. It was memory, pure and unfiltered, so potent it tore bark from trees and sent wolves howling in agony. And at the center of the flame rose a figure. Tall. Shrouded in twisted roots and charred bone. Crowned with ash. Eyes hollow. And on its chest, the same spiral mark Sarastra bore during her binding. It spoke with 100 voices. You bound us in her name. But you never burned the truth. We were the first vow. Sarastra fell to her knees. No. You weren't supposed to remain. We buried you before I ever rose. You were the cost. Aelin turned, horror sinking deep into her gut. Who is that? Sarastra didn't answer. But the figure did. I am what they called the Wound. The one who first held the flame, before even Sarastra. Stolen twice. Buried thrice. And now. I wake. The fire surged between Aelin and Sarastra again, but this time it did not connect. It split, one path to Sarastra, the other to Aelin, and a third that spiraled into the sky, wild and uncontrolled. The roots beneath the hollow began to shake. The sacred tree groaned. Ronan, watching from the ridge, gripped the hilt of his sword as the forest around him wept sap and fire. This wasn't the plan, he muttered. This wasn't ever supposed to be her war. Cithra, pale and trembling, opened her old tomes beneath the temple. And there, scrawled in blood-rust ink, buried in a half-burned page, she found it. Before the hollow, there was only her. Before fire, there was the Flamekeeper. The first queen had no name, for her name was taken. And in that instant, Cithra understood. The hollow was not built on 2 queens. It was built on 3. And one of them had been erased. Until now. At the grove, the figure lifted its arm. Fire twisted around its wrist, not burning, but binding. Chains made of vows. Each link forged in forgotten oaths. Each link pulsing with the names of the first wolves, the first flames, the first betrayals. And then. It snapped. The air cracked. A shockwave rippled across the hollow. And the pact of three, Aelin, Sarastra, Sithra, broke. The dagger that once sealed it shattered at Sithra's hip. The sigils that burned in Aelin's skin went dim. Sarastra's eyes filled with silver tears. She was the vow, Sarastra whispered. We were the echoes. All across the land, the wolves of the hollow raised their heads. And for the first time since the spiral hunt, they all howled at once. Not in fear. Not in rage. In mourning. The hollow remembered her name. The first flamekeeper. The one no one wrote down. The one every queen, every war, every flame, had tried to forget. Aelin stood amid the smoking grove. The sacred flame now burned on 3 pedestals. One golden. One silver. One shadowed. What happens now? She asked Sarastra. Sarastra looked up at the dark moon above them. Now, we answer to the one who came before us. And pray she lets the hollow live. Chapter 20, When the Flame Bows. The flame that had once answered to Aelin now stood divided, 3 pillars of light spiraling into the sky. One gold, pulsing with warmth, hers. One silver, cold and sharp as moonlight, Sarastra's. And one black flame that shimmered like smoke and ink, the first flamekeeper's. And in the space between them, the hollow trembled. Not in fear. In reverence. All across the valley, the wolves dropped to their haunches, heads low. The trees bent in unnatural angles. The ground itself cracked and reformed, ancient roots clawing up from below to form a circle of jagged earth around the flame. The hollow had not been invaded. It had remembered its true queen. Aelin stood barefoot on scorched earth, breath shallow, heart pounding. The fire inside her, so long her ally, her weapon, her voice, no longer responded. It didn't reject her. It simply waited. The black flame flickered once. And from within it, the first flamekeeper emerged. Not as a ghost. Not as a god. As a presence. A tall woman, her body stitched with glowing runes. Hair a cascade of obsidian silk. Eyes endless, ancient, and unreadable. She wore no crown. Because she had never needed one. Her voice echoed not in ears, but in bone. You have burned what was not yours. You carried fire carved from my breath. And now, you must return it. Aelin didn't move. Didn't flinch. She simply raised her chin, flame-scarred and unbowed. I didn't know, she said. But I carried it all the same. The flamekeeper stepped closer. Her bare feet left no mark on the earth. You did not ask where it came from. You called it power. And so it became war. But it was never a weapon. It was memory. Aelin felt tears rising, but not from guilt. From understanding. Then teach me how to carry it the right way. Let me fix what they broke. The flamekeeper extended her hand. And in it appeared a flame the color of twilight, neither fire nor shadow, but remembrance made real. To carry my flame is to burn your name. Will you become the hollow, instead of ruling it? Aelin's breath caught. What happens to who I am? She fades. So you may become what the hollow remembers. Silence stretched between them. Then, Aelin knelt. Not in surrender. In devotion. And whispered. Let me burn. The black flame rose from the flamekeeper's hand. It circled Aelin once. Then twice. Each loop pulled threads of gold from her chest, unraveling her fire strand by strand. She gritted her teeth, eyes closed, hands clenched, until she wasn't Aelin anymore. Until her flame flickered. And bowed. The fire did not go out. It shifted. It remembered. And in the clearing, with the old hollow watching, the wolves howling, the trees leaning close, a new flame was born. One of ash and gold. one that did not serve, but understood. Sarastor watched in silence. Tears traced silver paths down her cheeks. Not from envy. From mourning. She did what I could not, Sarastor whispered to Sithra. She gave it back. She gave herself back. Sithra said nothing. Because there were no words for what they had just witnessed. Only breath. Only awe. Only fire. Aelin stood. Not as queen. Not as flame-bearer. As flame-keeper. And the black flame circled her once more, then vanished into her chest. Her eyes shimmered not gold. Not silver. But both. The hollow pulsed once. Alive. Changed. And at her back, wolves rose to their feet. Not to follow. To stand beside her. Chapter 21, When the Flame Speaks. The fire inside her no longer roared. It whispered. Aelin walked the hollow in silence, feeling its rhythm beat beneath her skin. Where once her flame had flared with rage and heat, it now burned cool and deep, a living archive. Every step was accompanied by flickers of memory not her own. A child lighting the first hearth. A pact spoken in a language never written. A throne made not of stone, but woven branches and promises. You are not the first, the flame said inside her. But you may be the last. Sithra led her beneath the temple, deeper than Aelin had ever gone. Past the roots. Past the heartstone. Into a chamber no record had ever named. It had no walls, only floating embers suspended in air, each one glowing softly, flickering with stored memory. Aelin stepped inside, and every ember turned to face her. This is the vault of flamekeepers, Sithra whispered. Where every bearer who came before left a piece of their truth. The hollow never burned away its past, Aelin murmured. It just buried it. The embers pulsed in agreement. Then one drifted toward her. And entered her chest. Aelin gasped. The world fell away. She stood in a dark grove, surrounded by whispering trees. At the center was the first flamekeeper, not in power, but in chains. Before her stood a figure cloaked in starlight and stone, face hidden beneath a crown of thorns. Its voice was a crawl through soil and ash. Your hollow will not survive what I become. So you bury your fire, and call it peace. The flamekeeper did not answer. But she wept. Because she knew the truth. The fire had not been created for light or warmth. It had been forged to hold something back. And that something was still below. When she came back to herself, her hands were shaking. The chamber of embers was dim now. Silent. Sithra stood pale beside her. You saw it, the elder whispered. Didn't you? Aelin nodded slowly. The fire was never a gift. It was a lock. And we just opened it. All across the hollow, the sacred trees began to weep. Not sap. Not blood. Fire. Tiny golden rivulets snaked down bark like molten veins. Where they touched the ground, the soil smoked. And from the depths below, the earth groaned. A sound no living creature had ever heard. Not the moan of the hollow. But its warning. That night, Aelin sought Sarastor beneath the silver boughs. You knew, she said. Sarastor didn't lie. I suspected, she replied. But I never wanted to believe it. I thought the fire was mine because I was chosen. But I was chosen because I carried part of the seal. Aelin looked toward the horizon, where the second moon had not yet set. So what is it? What's beneath us? Sarastor's voice was a whisper. The devourer. The first hunger. The one who came before fire, and wants it back. That night, Aelin returned to the flame altar alone. She placed her hand on the new tricolored flame, gold, silver, shadow. And this time, the fire did not speak in riddles. It screamed. He is awake. The chains crack. You have 3 nights left. And then, he rises. The flame inside her flared in panic. And in the shadows, she saw something move beneath the earth, slow, coiled, massive. Not beast. Not man. Not God. Something older. Something the fire had been designed to forget. Aelin stood on the temple roof at dawn. Below her, the hollow stirred restlessly. Ronan approached, silent but steady, and stood beside her. "They're afraid," he said. "So am I," she replied. "But fear is a flame." She looked to the forest, to the roots beneath it, to the fire in her chest. "And I would rather burn than forget again." Chapter 22, The Silent Hunt. The hollow had many maps. None of them showed what lay beneath. Not below the heartstone. Not under the root crypts. Not in the veins of the flame. That place, whispered as the silence beneath, was never drawn, never written. Because to name it would be to awaken it. And yet Aelin stood now before the last sealed door, her hand pressed to the runes burned into the ancient bark. 3 nights, the flame had said. 3, and he rises. She wasn't going to wait. She brought 5. Ronan, for strength, instinct, and the vow they had never spoken aloud. Aelin, the Ember child, whose fire still burned in silence but watched everything. Sithra, whose knowledge was deeper than fear. Tavrek, the last living warden of the root circle, who had once refused to speak of this place. And Elira, blood-marked but stable, her loyalty still her own. No one else could be trusted. "We enter as one," Aelin told them. "And if we fail, we fall as fire." They stepped through the gate in silence. And the hollow did not follow. The path was no tunnel. It was a wound. A spiral staircase of petrified roots, slick with memory, lit only by the faint pulses of the flame inside Aelin's chest. Every step whispered. Every breath thickened. Not air. Ash. The deeper they went, the more they heard it. A rhythm. A heartbeat. Slow. Relentless. Boom. 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 It was not their own. At the base of the spiral was a vast, circular cavern. Roots stretched from ceiling to floor like prison bars. In the center lay a crater filled with black flame, dormant, cold, yet pulsing. And above it floated chains. 7 of them. Massive. Cracked. Still humming with ancient power. Each bore a sigil Aelin had never seen before. Aelin gasped, stepping forward. "This is where the fire was born. And where it was bound." Sithra sank to her knees. "We were never queens. We were jailers." Elira approached one of the chains, eyes narrowed. "It's breaking." The link before her pulsed once, then a hairline crack appeared along its length. And from it poured a whisper. "I hunger. I remember the taste of wolves. Of gods. Of queens." The crack widened. Aelin screamed as the black flame surged upward, a tendril of it snapping like a whip across the floor. Ronan grabbed Aelin, pulling her back. Tavrek raised his axe. "We need to go." But Aelin didn't move. She was staring at the 7th chain. The one with her name etched in glowing flame. The chamber shook. The walls wept molten sap. The first of the chains shattered. The flame roared up, not chaotic, not wild. Focused. It formed the outline of something colossal, crawling just beneath the surface of sight. Not a creature. Not a man. Something built of hunger. Of broken light. Of the forgotten pieces of gods. "We have to reseal it," Sithra cried. "Now." "We can't." Tavrek shouted. "Not unless the bearer burns willingly." All eyes turned to Aelin. She was trembling. Not from fear. But from truth. It's not me anymore. She turned slowly to Aelin. It's you. Aelin's eyes welled with silver fire. She stepped into the circle alone. The flame reached for her, not to consume, but to ask. It wanted her. Not as a vessel. As a keeper. And she answered with a whisper. If I burn, then let me burn everything he left behind. She raised her hand. And the seventh chain flared white-hot. The tendrils of black flame shrieked and collapsed. The other chain sealed tighter, for now. The heartbeat stopped. The chamber fell silent. And at the center, where the crater had roared, only Aelin stood. Breathing. Glowing. Changed. As they climbed back into the hollow, Aelin looked over her shoulder one last time. The silence behind them was full of promise. And threat. Ronan touched her shoulder. He's still down there. And he'll wait longer than any of us can. Aelin nodded once. Then we won't give him the chance. Chapter 23, The Breaking Point. When they returned from the depths, the hollow felt different. It was as if the air had grown thicker, stretched tight like a skin just before it tears. The trees leaned inward. The wolves paced more than they rested. Even the flame at the temple, steady and tall, had begun to flicker sideways. The hollow was holding its breath. And so was Aelin. Because now she knew the truth. The flame wasn't just a gift. It wasn't just a weapon. It was a seal. And its strength came from its existence. If it was ever extinguished, the devourer could never rise again. But the price of that victory would be everything. Aelin spent most of the next day alone in the Flamekeeper's chamber. She didn't speak. She didn't burn. She simply listened, to the silence between her heartbeats, to the flicker of memory in the embers surrounding her. The flame whispered truths. What it had held back. What it had hidden. What it would demand if asked to die. And at the center of those whispers, Aelin. Still glowing. Still young. Still burning too fast. At sunset, Aelin collapsed. She had been walking along the northern wall when her legs gave out and the flame inside her spiked. It blazed up her arms, her chest, her eyes. Cithra was first to reach her. The girl was burning, not from heat, but from within. She's holding too much, Cithra gasped. She's becoming the flame's fuse. Aelin knelt beside her, taking Aelin's hand, whispering ancient calming words the flame had taught her. Aelin's breathing slowed. But her skin still shimmered, silver and gold, threaded with cracks. I'm not ready, she said. I think I'm breaking. That night, the circle gathered, Cithra, Ronan, Sarastra, Tavrak, Elira, and Aelin. None of them raised their voices. Because there was only one topic left. The devourer sleeps, Aelin said. But we know now, the only thing that keeps him bound is the flame. Ronan leaned forward. You're not talking about sealing him. No, she said softly. I'm talking about snuffing the flame out. Dead silence. Sarastra broke it. If you extinguish the flame, the hollow dies. The trees. The wards. The wolves bond. You. Aelin nodded. I know. Cithra was the first to speak. If we destroy the flame, we lose everything. But if we don't, we risk losing more. Tavrak grimaced. We built this place from ash. We can build it again. Ronan turned to Aelin, his voice low. There's a third option. She met his eyes. No. I won't let Aelin burn for the mistakes we made. Sarastra stood, arms crossed. Then the choice is yours, Flamekeeper. Let it burn the world clean. Or carry it into silence. She went to the sacred flame that night alone. The grove was quiet. The tree above didn't move. The wolves had curled around the stones as if sensing what was coming. Aelin knelt before the flame, hand trembling. And she spoke to it. You gave me more than I ever asked for. You made me more than I thought I could be. But I won't let you hurt her. The flame flickered in answer. And for the first time in her life, it didn't resist. It opened, revealing a shard of darkness glowing with one final spark. A spark only she could touch. Aelin rose, the ember held in her palm like a dying star. Ronan waited at the edge of the grove. She looked at him. Then Aelin. Then the hollow. And whispered. Tomorrow, the flame ends. But tonight. She stepped into the center of the circle, hair wild, eyes glowing with both sorrow and steel. Tonight, I am still your queen. And I will burn for you one last time. Chapter 24, The Day the Flame Went Out. Dawn came gray and silent. No birds sang. No wolves howled. Even the wind seemed to hold its breath. Aelin stood at the threshold of the sacred grove, the last ember pulsing in her palm like a heartbeat on the edge of death. It glowed softly, gold, silver, and shadow, all woven together in a fragile dance. The flame had lived 1,000 lives. But today would be its last. They came to watch. Not in defiance. Not in protest. In mourning. Wolves lined the ancient trees in perfect stillness. Elders knelt around the perimeter of the grove, cloaks heavy with ash and snow. Children clutched wooden talismans etched with the flame's spiral, carved by hands that could not yet remember why. Even the sky dimmed, as if the hollow itself were bowing its head. Ronan stood by the sacred tree, jaw clenched, shoulders squared, but his eyes never left her. Aelin sat beside Sithra, wrapped in a cloak far too large, her hands aglow, but calm now. Balanced. Because the flame no longer pulled at her. It had found its keeper. And now, it was ready to rest. Aelin crossed the grove barefoot. Each step sent whispers through the roots. The fire had lived inside her, through her. It had made her fight, love, lead, lose. And now, it would leave her. The flame inside flickered, once, twice. Then settled. She reached the center of the grove, where the 3 flame pillars had once burned. Now only one remained, low, faint, cradled in a shallow bowl of obsidian carved before history. Aelin knelt. Held the ember over the bowl. And whispered. Thank you. She placed the ember down. It didn't scream. It didn't spark. It simply pulsed one last time. And went out. No explosion. No collapse. Just silence. And then, from the roots below, a sound none of them had ever heard. The hollow exhaled. Not in death. In relief. The grove remained still. But something shifted. The spiral runes etched across the hollow's oldest stones began to fade. The flame marks on warriors' skin dulled into scars. Even the sacred wards, always faintly glowing at the forest's edge, blinked once, and dimmed. The fire was gone. The flame had ended. And yet. The hollow stood. Not burning. Not collapsing. Just, breathing. Aelin rose slowly. Her eyes no longer glowed. Her mark had faded. But her spine was straight, her presence unchanged. Until she stumbled. Ronan was there before she could fall. He caught her in silence, held her upright, forehead to hers. It's done, she whispered. He nodded. You did it. We're still here. That evening, the council gathered. Sithra recorded the day's events by hand, no flame ink, no magical seal. Aelin slept deeply for the first time in weeks. Sarastra stood at the edge of the circle, watching the sky. When Aelin approached, the older queen did not speak right away. Then, softly. I thought the hollow was the flame. But it turns out it was you. Aelin sat beside her. No, she said. It was all of us. And now, we have to be enough. That night, Aelin returned to the now dark grove. The fire bowl was cold. The sacred tree towered above her, its bark no longer glowing, its roots no longer humming. She pressed her hand to it anyway. And to her surprise, it pulsed. Not with flame, but memory. She smiled. And whispered. So you're still listening. The roots shifted beneath her. And for the first time since the flame died, new growth began to rise. Chapter 25, Legacy of the Hollow. The fire was gone. And yet, the hollow was not dead. The sky no longer shimmered gold at dusk. The wards no longer glowed faintly along the forest edge. Even the wolves had quieted. But in the silence, something new had taken root. Not flame. Life. It began where the flame had ended. In the center of the sacred grove, once blackened and scorched, green shoots had appeared. First moss. Then small silver-leaved saplings. Then flowers Aelin had never seen, pale violet, each petal marked with a spiral swirl. The hollow was no longer burning. It was growing. Aelin was the first to kneel there. She placed her palm on the soil. And the new growth bent toward her hand, not in submission. In recognition. The ember may have gone out. But its echo lived on. Aelin walked the hollow as she always had, but it felt different beneath her boots. The ground no longer pulsed with heat. The stones no longer hummed. But the people looked at her the same. They didn't bow. They nodded. Some whispered her name in reverence. Others simply smiled. She wasn't their queen anymore. She was something else entirely. The one who let it go. Ronan met her at the North Watchtower that evening, holding something wrapped in a faded black cloth. She raised an eyebrow. What's this? He unwrapped it, a smooth pendant, shaped like a wolf's fang, carved with the sigil of the hollow and inlaid with 3 metals, silver, gold, and obsidian. Your mark may be gone, he said. But your story isn't. And I want our children to know it. Aelin blinked, caught off guard. He shrugged, eyes soft. Eventually. That night, Aelin stood before the elders, no longer glowing, no longer burning, but strong. She didn't kneel. She simply said, I'm not the flame. But I am what came after it. And I want to learn how to grow something instead of guarding something. Sithra wept openly. Sarastor placed a hand on her shoulder. Then the hollow is yours now. Not to rule. But to tend. The hollow's walls had long been carved with flame symbols, runes that glowed in firelight, marked in ash and soot. Now, a new spiral was painted beside the temple's gate. A green spiral. Painted with moss and flower dye. At its center, no flame. Just a root, twisting, deep, and strong. Aelin added the final mark herself. Not as flamekeeper. Not as queen. Just as Aelin. She stood alone at sunrise. The wolves flanked her, but did not speak. The wind moved through the branches like breath. And the hollow stretched before her, not in glory, not in grandeur. In peace. The kind bought not by victory, but by release. She whispered into the dawn. Let what comes next be better. Let it remember, not the fire, but the choice. And behind her, the hollow bloomed. Epilogue, and the hollow remembered. Years passed. The hollow changed, but not in ways the outside world could see. Its trees grew thicker. Its roots deeper. The spiral paths that once led to battlefields now wound toward healing circles, moss gardens, and sunlit reading stones. No more war councils. No more ward fires. No more sacrifice altars. But everywhere, echoes of what had come before. Not monuments. Just memory. On the southern edge of the hollow stood a small cottage. No banners. No guards. Just ivy climbing old stone and wolves napping beneath the windows. Inside lived a woman with silver in her hair, laughter in her eyes, and a quiet strength that never needed to be proven. Visitors still came. Some brought questions. Others brought thanks. Most brought stories. And Aelin listened to every one. Not as queen. Not as keeper. As someone who had once burned. And chose to grow instead. At the center of the hollow now stood a new tree. It had grown from the exact spot where the last flame had been extinguished. Its bark shimmered faintly with silver veining. Its leaves curled like flame tips, but never burned. And beneath it sat a bench, carved from the old hearthstone. There, Aelin taught the next generation how to feel the forest's pulse. How to read the spiral paths. How to remember without fear. She wore no crown. Only a pendant with a green spiral, and a memory of warmth that no longer scorched. She was the hollow's new beginning. Not forged in fire, but rooted in peace. Beyond the ridge, past the river stones, Ronan built the new watch grounds. Not for war, but for guarding stories. He taught the young how to track not with eyes, but with heart. He taught them that courage wasn't swinging a blade, but standing still when it mattered. And every full moon, he would climb to the north tower, look out at the wilds, and murmur a silent promise. If it rises again, we will rise, too. Then he'd return to the cottage with the fire-warmed hearth and the woman who never asked him to kneel, but always made him stay. They say the hollow still whispers. Not in flame, but in wind through trees. They say the roots beneath the sacred tree hum with memory, and that if you sleep beneath its branches, you dream of queens with fire in their hands and wolves that once bore flame in their eyes. But no one fears the old stories anymore. They remember them. They pass them on. And with every telling, the hollow grows. Not to burn, but to belong. And that is how the fire ended. Not with a war. Not with a scream. But with a woman who let go. So something new could take its place. The flame is gone. But the hollow lives.
Every story has an ending, but some mysteries live on. If you enjoyed this tale, don't let it fade into the shadows. Smash that like button and subscribe for more thrilling stories that will transport you beyond the veil of the ordinary. Subscribe to our channel and your name will appear at the beginning of our next video, where we will pleasantly thank you for your subscribing. Tap the bell icon so you never miss a journey into the unknown. Share your thoughts in the comments. What twists did you see coming? And what secrets do you think still remain? Until next time, stay curious, stay brave, and let the next story begin.